What's going on, everybody? This is Mike, and this is Serial at Night, episode number 57. And today I got a few things to talk about, but before we get into it, first I want to open the show and say thank you again to Video Game Outsiders and the VGO podcast and the VGO crew for graciously inviting me on the show to talk some Days Gone and some other news items. I appreciate that. That was a ton of fun, and hopefully I can do that again. Secondly, also wanted to mention that Mitch and I are starting back up on some podcasts again. So if you haven't listened to that most recent episode, please check that out. And then third, one thing I always forget to mention, and I mean to do this more often, the music that you hear at the beginning and the ends of the show, I always mean to plug this. That is Mitch's band, actually, called Bohemian Grove, and the music's incredible. So I am going to try to get some of that stuff posted to the website. I'm going to talk to Mitch about it too and just see what versions are available to get posted. But with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get into it. So I've got a few topics. The first was going to be Epic Games and some of the comments Tim Sweeney had made about Steam again, and his just weird infatuation with continuously commenting on that. But I realized that it came kind of via Twitter, so I want to hit on that. Also, there was some news today that actually just broke earlier today about Epic essentially buying Rocket League developer. And let me pull that up right now too. Let's see. I thought I had it in front of me, and I didn't, so I apologize. Yeah, they bought Rocket League developer Psyonix, and so that's going to kind of go into the conversation that I have about the comments that Tim Sweeney made about Steam as well. And then I want to cover some of the Days Gone reviews. Just complete chaos in my mind as far as how Days Gone was covered. Again, on the VGO podcast, we covered some of this stuff, but I've had some more time to think about it, and I also want to comment on that. And then there was also just some more, and I'm beating a dead horse, so I'm going to save this for last, but there was more disgruntled developers coming out and talking about how terrible their life was at a video game development studio. And this time, it was Nether Realm, who just released Mortal Kombat. And so I do want to comment on that. I promise I'm going to probably have a different angle this time, but I am going to save that for the end because I have a feeling that some people might be getting sick of that conversation. And so, like I said, I'll save that for the end so you don't have to fast forward through it. So first things first, let's talk about this Epic stuff. So let's start out with the Rocket League thing. So Epic Games bought Rocket League developer, and again, abruptly or quickly announced that they would be pulling the game from Steam, from the Steam storefront, which at this stage I totally understand. If they own the developer and they own that IP, of course they're not going to put it on Steam, and that's going to be the case. Especially given the recent comments from Tim Sweeney, the CEO himself. And so we talked about this on the VGO podcast, and I'd given it some more thought because we had a conversation about kind of target markets and who Steam or who Epic is really looking to go after, and whether somebody like me is actually the target market. or, or other maybe older gamers, right? People not playing Fortnite, with kind of the statistic that, that most people that have Epic installed don't have Steam installed. And I thought about this a little more, and I agreed at first until I started to chew on it a little longer. And so with Epic continuing to go after exclusives that were either on Steam or stopping Steam from getting these games, I actually think that there is an appetite for Epic to get a consumer like myself to install and buy games on the Epic Store. So, given the statistic that most Epic users don't have Steam installed, I think that means that the current Epic user base maybe isn't a Steam target audience just based on the fact that they don't have the Steam launcher installed. But on the flip side of it, with Epic continuing to go after or stop Steam from getting games, I think what that's really indicating to me is that that Epic really does want a piece of that pie and really does want to engage users from the Steam community and get people like me to install that launcher by obviously getting exclusives like Metro, Rocket League, things that have maybe, historically been big on Steam, and try to get me to install that launcher. I think the other piece of it, and this is where it's a little weird to me too, is, Epic is lifting information from Steam in order to operate their store, which is kind of bullshit if you think about it. And so, basically Tim Sweeney got on Twitter and was, and I didn't know this yesterday, but he was basically taking kind of an AMA and Ask Me Anything with some Twitter users. And one of the things that came up was one Twitter user said, I'll read what the tweet said. This was by one of the Twitter users asking Tim Sweeney a question. I mean, Valve operates how it does today, except that they come out and say that they're going to slash their revenue cut and do not plan on increasing it in the future. In such a scenario, will you still give money for exclusives and compete with them? Tim Sweeney said, if Steam committed to a permanent 88% revenue share for all developers and publishers without major strings attached, Epic would hastily organize a retreat from exclusives while honoring our partner commitments and consider putting our own games on Steam. So here's where this stuff starts to get frustrating for me. He's acting in a lot of ways, and look, this is good business, right? I mean, he's acting like this savior for game stores. And on one hand, I feel like competition is good. What I don't feel like is, well, inherently what he's doing is competition. I don't like it personally, but I still think it's smart business. If you go listen to one of the previous Serial at Night podcasts, I've kind of hit on that and, talked about how I think it is smart business, but I think it's, it's not something that I want to support. But in trying to say if Steam commits to an 88% revenue share for all developers and publishers without major strings attached, I mean, this was in one of the articles, but it's pretty obvious. I mean, we know Steam's not going to do that. Steam's model for maintaining their store, staying relevant, creating keys, giving publishers control over creating keys, it's just not realistic for Steam to do that. But what I don't understand, what bothers me is just do you. Instead of building a better product, Epic continues to poke and prod at Steam. Look, I don't have a problem with another launcher on the market. I don't. But it is getting a little old, continuing to, like, it seems like every week something comes out about Epic and saying something just ridiculous about Steam. And it's like, just do you. If you're going to get the exclusives, get the exclusives. That's fine. but continuously coming out and making comments about Steam's kind of business model and pricing model and revenue split. I think it's just, it's getting old to me, and I'm still not supporting the store. But, again, where I was kind of thinking about it a little more is I do think that ultimately, of course, Epic's going to want a bigger cut of those Steam users, and I think this is how they're going about doing it. And it's just a big turnoff for me. And so that said, getting Rocket League, I'm curious to see how this actually works. I wonder if they actually will pull the game. I don't think they can technically disable the game from working for those people that have bought it on Steam, but I mean, part of me wonders if they would do something where they could disable the Steam game and force, give people on Steam a code to install the game through the Epic launcher. I don't know. It's pretty concerning to me because that's not the future I want to live in. I'd rather the products compete on a feature by feature basis. Now that said, exclusive games on platforms, if we want to call launchers platforms, isn't uncommon. But when it comes to, I guess I was going to say when it comes to third party, I don't like to see it. Well, technically Rocket League isn't third party anymore, so I guess that's on them. But I certainly don't want to see it with third parties, and it's getting a little frustrating. So, just some general thoughts there. Epic continues to go after Steam, and I don't know if Steam's going to blink or not. I wouldn't be surprised if Steam does do maybe a different revenue split, but they're certainly not going to do it right after Tim Sweeney says something, right? Then that's a win-win for Tim Sweeney. He can come out and say shit like this. He knows it's going to get picked up by every outlet. He knows podcasts like me are going to talk about it, and it's going to continue to bring conversation around the Epic Game Store. Second, if Steam doesn't do anything, he can come out and talk about that. And if they do something, he can sit there and kind of play the, pseudo martyr in a way that, he forces. So, I don't know. I'm still not going to install it, but is what it is. All right. Days gone. Days freaking gone. So, again, this was another topic we talked about on the VGO show, but I wanted to talk about it again because there's some jackass journalism happening here. And I know that at least that terminology for jackass journalism for some of my quotes wasn't as well received as maybe it should have been. Obviously, it's a little lowbrow in the title, but there's some stuff that has come up in reviews as of late where, again, it just comes across as like gamer groupthink. And before I get into Days Gone, I want to bring up a story that came up years ago. And essentially the story was there was some website where gaming journalists would kind of gather online, and it was this gaming journalist web forum, right? And they would kind of collude together to decide, what things they would try to take down, what stories they would try to boost, so on and so forth. And it got exposed, and that site shut down. But my point is that I don't think that practice has stopped for outlets and game journalists, in quotes, because it just seems too obvious when a game like Days Gone comes out and the narrative seems to be the same across every single outlet. Every single outlet seemed to report the same things. And the game that they were reporting on, the game that I was reading reviews for, and the game that I was playing couldn't be further apart. The game I was reading about is not the game I am playing. And they've said that. Some people have speculated that, well, it could be because people reviewing the game were playing a pre-patched version of the game that maybe was a little more broken or had more bugs. Maybe. But a lot of the things that I've been reading aren't even really so much around the bugs as much as reviewers and quote unquote critics almost having an axe to grind against formulaic gameplay in all games and taking it out on Days Gone. And so when I read these reviews, and like granted, let me say this, it is a 72 on Metacritic because there are some high scores, right, from relatively less known outlets, and then there's some pretty low scores from some pretty big outlets. For example, GameSpot gave it a 50. And I don't know where these kind of scores are coming from, because a lot of the 50 has been, at least in this instance, really kind of talks about repetitive, mission structure, flat characters, not being interesting. And then it gets more into some of the, just kind of being offended by the characters and just different things like that. And I'm just, all I can think is just like, I have not run into any repetitive gameplay yet. I'm close to 20 hours in now at this point. They're making comments about, let me read this. You also accelerate with R2 and shoot with R1, which, while not horrible, is clunky and awkward. Okay. Well, the other buttons are used for things. I suppose they could probably change that, but like this level of like just ultra hyper criticism on this game is something that I don't understand. Like, these are minor things. And this is where I go back to Red Dead Redemption, which got all 10s. Red Dead Redemption's control scheme was one of the most clusterfuckety control schemes in the last 10 years. The game played like a fucking PS2 game. It controlled like a PS2 game. The buttons weren't intuitive because it was still set up like a fucking PS2 game. But but that was enough to hold it against Red Dead. But Days Gone comes out and all of a sudden people are talking about fucking, you've got to accelerate with R2 and shoot with R1. Like, it's also leaving out half of that mechanic. Half of that mechanic is also locking on with L1. So it's just a general shift of your fingers so you can you just use your middle finger and your index finger on the top. It doesn't take a lot unless you're absolutely fucking disjointed in your fingers that you can't make it happen. But, that's just one example. I mean, there's other parts in reports of the graphics don't look good. I don't know what game they're playing. The graphics look fine. Not only fine, they look great, in my opinion. There's not vistas. Everybody always gets fucking boners over how many vistas there are. Oh my God, that cutscene, that slow motion that showed this fucking vista. Oh my God, it's incredible. But who cares? The game looks great. The scenery and the setup looks fantastic. There's no pop in for the most part. I rarely have seen a dip in frames. I mean, everything as far as graphics, smoothness, actual gameplay. The only argument that I would have is probably the fucking load times are really bad. But in general, once you get past the first few, or don't have like a major transition, you don't have to deal with load times. Third, people are breaking out how they're pissed off that, some of the zombies or the freakers, they're all white. I mean, get the fuck out of here. All the freakers are white. Okay. Now we're going to pull that card on it. Like, it's just looking for things. And this trend across all of these reviews, from 30 to 40 to 50, 50, 50, 50, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60. It's describing a game that I am not even playing. Look at this. Here's a quote. Days Gone is an above average open world game that is brought down by a weak first act, poor shooting, and a lot of technical issues. Okay, let me reread that. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an above average open world game that is brought down by a weak first act, poor shooting, and a lot of technical issues. That would probably be more accurate. Because Days Gone, while yes, it's an above average open world game, the first act does a very good job of setting up the characters. The shooting is on par, if not better than most third-person shooters that I've found. It's a little loose, but I think that that's just a product of I think that's probably a design decision just based on the fact that it is going for a more real feel, just based on your motorcycle isn't a fucking minivan. You can only carry a couple guns. You can only carry so much ammo. And obviously, you're not a fucking sharpshooter. You're a biker that's been beat to hell based on the fact that you're living in a zombie apocalypse. Look, I might be being an apologist a little bit here, but I don't think the shooting is poor. I certainly wouldn't call it poor. And a lot of technical issues, I've seen zero technical issues at all. You know what I've seen? I've seen an above average open world game, maybe a good to great open world game that has a solid first act that sets up characters that has on par, if not better shooting than most third-person shooters. There are no technical issues, and it does a great job in letting you multi-thread stories and multi-thread the tasks and missions that you want to work on. You can choose at any given moment what you want to progress. Unlike a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, where you're stuck having only one one mission, side mission, or story open at a time. Right? So I'm just like, I don't care if outlets don't like a game, but it often seems like there is some sort of collusion, and I'm going conspiracy theory on this. It always seems like there's some sort of collusion because it just feels too convenient that everyone has the same fucking opinion with the same complaints. Feels just a little too convenient that they all have the same criticisms with some of the same scores and on the same game with complaints that could be levied against games that they've scored higher that have done shit worse. This isn't critical. They're not being critical. They're being petty. And in providing an inaccurate picture about the game, again, a bad score would be one thing. But people are taking joy in some of the podcasts I've listened to shitting on this game. And the things that they're shitting on are unfounded in the game that I'm playing. So, that kind of shit irritates me to no end. And some people, you could say, well, why do I care? I care because it's fucking a major hobby of mine. I care because I enjoy video games. But we're starting to get to a point where I think some of these outlets are just taking their fucking opinions just a little too serious and trying to shoehorn narrative into reviews and video games where it might not fit or might not exist. And I cannot believe some of the reviews that I've read so far in the criticisms that they've levied against Days Gone. It just doesn't add up for me. And that's not me saying this is the greatest game of all time. It's not. And I've read weird things about it being maybe 15 hours to 60 hours in the main mission. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to keep my attention for the full game. But I know right now, I love signing in, going out and finding some of the Nero camps, which are the kind of zombie. It's like almost like the government that are trying to figure out these fucking zombie freaker things. You can kind of infiltrate their areas. I love knocking out the nests. I love opening up the map. I love pushing the story forward. There's a lot of things that I like about this game, and I've played a few more hours of it since we recorded that podcast last night, and I'm starting to go to the point that I think this is actually a great game. It will be in my top 5 of 2018. I can tell you that. So. enough on Days Gone. I just think that there's just so much there is some jackass journalism in it where just the takes don't match up with the game. So be it. So here's where we're going to transition into the Nether Realm report. And so if you're sick of hearing me talk about how I do not agree with the way that ex-employees are talking about their former employers and how the video game industry is covering it from a labor standpoint, feel free to turn off the podcast because I am going to talk about it again. I have a different angle this time. And I also have an example for how serious and overreacty everybody is in some of the EA and Respawn announcements about Titanfall. And so I will weave that into the conversation when we get there. But let's set this up. So this last week, once again, this time not an anonymous person, someone on Twitter came out and started complaining about crunch at Nether Realm and Mortal Kombat. And so this guy's name, I don't even know his real fucking name. And I'm not going to dig for it. I think it's James Longstreet. Jiminy Snackmouth is his name on Twitter. Or is his handle he's at J Longstreet. I hardly sleep. I'm grumpy at home. I have no energy to go out. Getting a weekend away from work is a major achievement. If I take a Saturday off, I feel guilty. If I'm not being forced to work this way, but if I don't, then the job won't get done. It's been 8 years, and they've made it clear to me that I am a persona non grata there anyway, so fuck it. Working at Nether Realm on MK9 nearly killed me. I didn't sleep for more than 4 hours for months from January to April 2011. I was at work more than half of the time. Okay, so let me put it this way. What I'm going to get into isn't so much arguing about crunch in software development. What I am going to argue about is how the video game industry will take one user, one former dev, one obviously disgruntled employee, and run with it, give them all the power, and basically represent the industry, and represent the company, and represent the workforce without any other major due diligence completed. Video games coverage, the video games media, will take one person from a company of what I can find online. I think there's 215 NetherRealm people on LinkedIn. So, and on some of the other research I did, it said there was 200 to 500 employees. I don't know for sure how many there are, but if there's 215 on LinkedIn, at the very minimum, this is 1/215th of all employees. And they're going to use these two quotes to run with it and completely try to shit on NetherRealm. And the conversation that comes out of it is the games media needs to do its job in reporting this stuff so they can fix and bring attention to the severe, stress and burnout that exists in video games. So, here's the fucking problem with that. At any let me start here. At any mid to large size company, culture can vary dramatically from business unit to business unit. So while this person, in whatever business unit he worked in, he may have been disgruntled. But there could be 214 other employees that didn't feel this way, right? And that doesn't mean it needs to be a company-wide shift in culture. Maybe the leader of this particular business unit needed to be let go to drive a different culture shift that better aligns with the corporate culture. Right? But none of this is looked into. Right? And even further, I don't know if this guy was a contractor, and I say this all the time, whether he's a W-2, 1099, or a full-time employee. It fucking matters. And it even came up in the article. It said, some people, let me find the quote. If I can't find it, I'll just paraphrase it, but $12 an hour. And they felt like second-class citizens. Okay. Here's... fucking God. Here's the thing, people, about contracting. First, if you're a W-2 contractor, you're working... so let me start out, because it seems like fucking grown fucking adults don't understand the difference. If you're a W-2 contractor, you are working through an agency. And so that agency may or may not give you benefits. So let's just pretend Nether Realm is working with a talent resource vendor called Great Talent. I don't know. We'll call it Great Talent for now. They reach out to Great Talent and say, hey, we need to staff augment our QA for 16 weeks, and we need 10 people. Okay? They're not going to hire a full-time employee because it's fucking expensive to hire full-time employees. To hire a full-time employee, you would have to post the job posting, have HR screen them, have managers screen them, bring them in, give them benefits, all of these fucking things that you'd have to do, but you only need them for 16 weeks. So you're not going to go through all of that effort for somebody that you may only need for a 16-week QA cycle, right? Or an 8-week QA cycle. Fuck, it might be 2 months. It might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. Nevertheless, if you know that you're not going to keep them on, it's too much effort. It just does not financially make sense to bring on 10 full-time employees only to let them go 6 months from now. Nobody wants that. So you reach out to a third-party recruiter, which would be the W-2 employees, and what they do is they negotiate a rate. NetherRealm could come in and say, hey, depending on the skills and experience, we're willing to pay $12 to $16 an hour for QAs. And then this firm probably has usually these firms have a ton of people that are either on the bench or have applied for the positions directly through them, and they've already done the vetting. They already have cleared these people. That all they really need to do is place them. So it's really quick to get people in. Now, these firms may or may not offer benefits. And if they do, they're probably pretty shitty. So you can pass on the contract, or you can go, it's quick work, I'm going to take it. But to say you felt like a second-class citizen, you're not a second-class citizen. This sounds like they found somebody that's never fucking contracted before. You're not working for NetherRealm. You're working for fucking Great Talent. Again, my fake talent agency. You're working for Great Talent. You're not working for NetherRealm. They bring you on and they can get rid of that contract whenever they fucking feel like. That's contracting. The benefit is that you can get experience at a large company with pretty minimal effort, because for positions you would not otherwise be qualified for, or otherwise not be considered for in a full-time role. Right? Because if you're going for full-time employees, you're going to probably be looking to really flushing people out to say, I want to hire people that I know will be here for a long time. But you get to walk away as a contractor with NetherRealm on your resume, with Mortal Kombat on your resume, and take that anywhere. But what you shouldn't do is come out and bitch about it. Okay? So that's W-2 contracting. Okay? 1099 contracting. Okay, this is something we don't hear about. 1099 contracting. This means you are both the business and the employee. So if NetherRealm comes to you, comes to me, I'll pretend I have some skills that they need. Let's say Nether Realm comes to me. I'm not going through a third-party recruiter. They post a contract need on their website or on a job board that says, hey, we need a such and such animator. And they're going to put the requirements for that contract. And you're going to bid on it. And you're going to say, well, there's two ways it could happen. You're going to bid on it, or they might bring you in for an interview, however they want to handle it. And in your contract, you have the ability to say, if I'm let go for any reason before the contract ends, I want the full contract paid out. You're willing to negotiate a higher rate because it's a riskier position, so on and so forth. And the reason you can negotiate these higher rates is because you need to pay your income tax, but then you also need to pay the business employee tax because you are representing both yourself as a business and yourself as an employee. So generally, if you were going to charge $100 an hour, if you were a $100 an hour employee, technically, if you were going in as a 1099, based on the fact that you're not going to get paid PTO, you're not going to get 401k, you're not going to get HSA, you're not going to get medical, you're not going to get dental, you're not going to get vision. Your contract could get let out early. You have to pay double tax for both employment and business. You're probably going to charge 35 to 55% more. But if you don't, and you take the contract anyway, that's on you. Okay? So the reason I'm bringing all of this stuff up is because none of this is ever mentioned in these articles. They're taking one person, or in Jason Schreier's article about EA or Apex or Anthem, 18 people, 18 disgruntled people. They're not mentioning what type of employees these people are. They're using very specific use cases of disgruntled employees to try to paint the picture of a larger issue in the industry. And I'm not even here right now to say if there is or isn't an issue. What I am saying is it's lazy reporting, it's propaganda to continue to report on a very small segment of the users, of the employees. When some of those employees might not even be employees of Nether Realm. If you are a contractor, again, you are not an employee of Nether Realm or EA or any fucking company other than either the talent agency that recruited you and placed you at the site, or you are employed by yourself and you are placing yourself at the site being paid by Nether Realm on a contract basis. Now, if you're pissed off, you can leave that contract at any time as well. No penalties usually. Actually, I can't think of a time there's ever been a penalty. But to come out and bitch about it is not accurate. And I get that, you know, QA, for example, QA people are notoriously underpaid, as I was having a conversation with Game Trade Greg on Twitter. Totally agree. Some of these people are underpaid in contract positions. But they, you know, on the other side, they're also the easiest to source. They're the easiest to get people in. And while I agree that they're underpaid in a lot of ways, what I don't agree with is using that small sample size and trying to paint this entire industry as if it's on fucking fire because a few fucking people are butthurt over their goddamn position in life. You're not, go fucking contract better then. Find a different role, right? If you can be employed at NetherRealm or EA, chances are you can probably find another fucking gig, but to sit here and complain about it, that stuff is negotiated up front. And if you're not asking about the hour expectations or the time off expectations when you're walking into these contract positions, then you fucked up. You know? And on the other hand, some of this stuff is like most third-party W-2 contractors, you can't go over 40 hours. So you're protected there in a lot of ways. But sometimes they will pay overtime, right? But none of that's reported, or they're getting overtime, right? So that's a contracting piece of it, to go on fucking for a long tangent. Now, if it's a full-time employee, again, written into, if you're a salaried full-time employee, you're given time off. This guy even admitted he could have time off. And he said he didn't take it because the work wouldn't get done. Get the fuck out of here with that. So that's a sign. I don't know how old this guy is. I couldn't find well, I don't know if I could find a picture of him, but here's the thing. I've been a developer. Okay. I started out freelancing. I moved into development. Then eventually I moved to management, then leadership, and then leadership and strategy. Okay. I've seen it all. And when I was in development, I had a lot of that. I had a lot of self-worth in myself about, if I don't fucking do it, then no one else will. And you know what? I was a bad teammate. I was a jackass, and I was abrasive in thinking that. That's right. That was immediately writing off the talent of my coworkers. That was writing off the talent of my colleagues. And that was essentially elevating myself to act like I'm better and I need to fucking be there so the work can get done. And that's not the case. And even if it is the case, again, this is where some of the leadership comes in. Even if it is the case, the employee that takes a day or two off, let's just say this guy, because crunch is a thing. Let's just say this guy, it's accurate that he was working fucking 100-hour weeks. He would have been more effective. Instead of putting a chip on his shoulder and saying he needed to be there to get the fucking work done, he would have been more effective taking the 2 days off, giving up 16 hours or 20 hours of work. He would have been more effective in 80 hours than in 100 because he would have had time off to rest instead of having stress and burnout. Employees that have rest are more effective than employees that don't. That said, sometimes burnout and stress happens and sometimes crunch happens. And it's not constant. You need to take ownership in your own well-being in a lot of ways. But he already said he could take off. He was not forced to work this fucking way. But nobody wants to talk about that. Again, quote, I am not being forced to work this way, but if I don't, then the job won't get done. Bullshit. You are not being forced to work that way, but the job will fucking get done. Okay? And then to say that it's clear to me he's persona non grata, so fuck it. Like, this dude is not a team player. And again, I'm not even starting to argue what if there is or isn't a problem with burnout in the industry. What I'm saying is the way the media is covering this is bullshit. And they're acting like they're this huge player in trying to get everything out there and being on the front lines of change. They're not driving change. They're driving click-through is what they're fucking doing. You know, I was listening to the Giant Beastcast and fucking, what's his name from Vice, I think it was on there. I don't even fucking remember his name. But he was talking about you might have a friend that says, I don't care if there's crunch as long as the game is good. And this person said, maybe you should challenge your friend on that. Maybe if there's a clear-cut case of actual labor abuse, then yeah, maybe I'm going to question it. But I'm not going to question it because one fucking kid, one person, one man, one woman is bitching on Twitter. Okay? Maybe the games media should do some fucking due diligence themselves and figure out if there's actually an issue, if it's a business unit issue, if it's a leader issue, if it really is a company culture issue. Figure that the fuck out. Jesus. I mean, it's not that difficult. But to sit here and act like, well, the more we report on it, the better it's going to get. And to that, here's the example. Just this week, it came out that Respawn Entertainment, who brought you Apex Legends, was going to delay their plans for another Titanfall and focus on making the best Apex Legends that they can make, and continuing to execute on the new Star Wars IP. And the narrative that came out was, look, our reporting is working. They don't want to burn their employees out. Nope, that's not what the fuck happened. Let me tell you what happened. They have Apex that is seeing a decline in user base, and that was a fucking cash cow. And the ROI from placing their employees to work on that 100% probably has a better return than trying to make what was a rumored VR Titanfall game. Second, EA can't afford to fuck up another Star Wars. I'm sorry I'm cussing a lot this episode, but geez, it's not that difficult to understand. They're smart enough to... Look, if their capacity numbers say they have X capacity, they're taking X capacity and putting it to 2 projects instead of 3. Okay, but this conversation about, look, our reporting is saving people from fucking burnout, get out of here. We don't even know if there's a problem with burnout yet because you haven't done any real due diligence to figure out what the hell is even going on at the studios. Jesus, the fuckery is just beyond comprehension. Okay? It's just what's the business case? What's the business value? Where is the time going to generate the most return for the fucking company? And they said delayed. And now everybody's saying, "Oh, it's canceled." No. They're probably going to get Apex Legends back on track, try to retain some players there. And they're probably going to try to make sure that Star Wars game is as good as it can get given recent publicity. But I'm going to fucking tell you it's not because of burnout. And I'm just sick of just giving everybody so much power, all these disgruntled employees so much power, without having a conversation with the people that actually enjoy the job, that could speak to the good things, speak to maybe some frustrations that certain business units have that others don't. I mean, at what point do these companies, at what point is Polygon just going to go to Glassdoor.com and start looking at fucking reviews from disgruntled employees? I've worked for multiple companies where you go to Glassdoor.com and there's employees on there just bitching. And in a lot of cases, I know who those employees are, and I'm reading it and going, you're just pissed off, man. It was a great company to work for, and you fucked it up. And now you're pointing at the company and you're blaming the company because you fucked up your employment. It's asinine to me. And again, I'm not arguing. There might be a stress and burnout issue in video games. There might be. But in the last month, we've heard from 20 people on what would be combined teams of thousands. What the fuck? Get out of here. It's just stupid. So anyway, that's all I had to say. I've said it on Twitter that I've been playing both sides a little bit and have been trying to be a little more level-headed. I said this wasn't going to be one of those podcasts, and it wasn't. I just can't fucking take it. So anyway, for RetroGameFix.com, again, Serial at Night episode 57. I'm your host, Mike. And please stay tuned for a couple of Retro Jones episodes that we've got upcoming too. Check out VideoGameOutsiders.com as well. And until next time, see ya!